Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Chicago Fire Season 13's Novak and Damon romance is great, but it must not be trapped by this overused trope. Lizzie Novak and Jack Damon just became an item on Chicago Fire, but there's one issue with their relationship that the series needs to overcome quickly. Network TV relationships can be fickle, and the high number of one Chicago cast exits can make it difficult to gauge how long any pairing might last. Only recently, the seemingly improving relationship between Monica and Chief Pascal was affected by a permanent change to the Chicago Fire cast. Granted, Monica Pascal's death in Chicago Fire wasn't precisely the most typical way for a series to end a relationship, although Dick Wolf shows can feel that way at times. But Chicago Fire Season 13 just started one new relationship that already seems to be dashing itself on the rocks, and the reasoning is almost more frustrating than Monica's car crash. In this case, it comes down to one storytelling tactic that TV writers fall back on with far too much frequency. Jack Damon, Severide's brother on Chicago Fire, first receives a kiss from Novak in Season 13, Episode 16, but the two had been building rapport since before then. As was previously noted in the series, Damon made a strong impression on the Ambo crew when he thought to call 911 at the first sign a patron at Molly's was in trouble. That built him up as a do-gooder, but it's certainly not the only reason for Jack and Lizzie to have chemistry. In fact, the episode A Beast Like This puts that chemistry on full display from the start. The moment they wake up in bed together, the extremely flirtatious chemistry between Jack and Lizzie feels almost no different from the brief chemistry they previously showed in Chicago Fire's bar Molly's. But Novak and Damon's chemistry does feel somewhat more developed after their one-night stand, and it only grows more adorable as Season 13, Episode 17 continues. Unfortunately, there is one small issue that presents itself near the very beginning of the episode, and it hints at a huge problem with several TV shows that Chicago Fire can't afford to repeat. Early after waking up together, Damon tells Novak that he doesn't want to pursue a relationship because he just joined Engine 51 under Herman and doesn't want to risk his job for a fling. Novak takes the news so well that it actually makes Damon uncomfortable, although she does make him rethink things with a passionate kiss before they leave for their shift. And he definitely should rethink things, because Chicago Fire's Carver and Violet are already more than enough of a will-they/won't-they relationship that the series doesn't need another one. The reason for dancing around relationships is typically to avoid shipping death, the product of writers running out of ways to keep a potential relationship interesting once the pair actually gets together. Still, will-they/won't-they relationships often work because the chemistry is at least somewhat questionable, whereas Novak continues to maintain adorable chemistry with Damon even after he breaks up with her. Short of turning them into one of Chicago Fire's most toxic relationships, it's hard to go back on that at this point. Fortunately, there's no need to move backward at all to keep things interesting. One of the best examples of a relationship that stayed interesting after things worked out is Chicago Fire's Stellaride. Kid and Severide definitely had their issues at the beginning, but watching them move forward and push for adoption despite having dangerous jobs has provided enough drama that it's ridiculous to think the only interesting source of tension could be two characters taking forever to finally start dating officially. The question of whether two characters will get together is far from the only interesting question about their relationship. That question also doesn't make sense anymore after A Beast Like This. Herman seems to break through Damon's fears about not getting to remain at the station, so this episode of Chicago Fire ends with Jack in the perfect place to stop snubbing Lizzie and give things a lasting shot. Besides, Jack Damon and Kelly Severide are still developing their relationship as brothers. That alone will influence Jack's personal and professional relationship with Lizzie. As long as Novak and Damon work together, there will always be interesting relationship dynamics to explore outside of the tired will-they/won't-they bit. Chicago Fire has always known how to tug at the heartstrings while keeping pulses racing with sirens and smoky rescues. Season 13 hasn't strayed from that formula, but it's also dared to do something new, spark a romance between Violet McCalmey's old rival, paramedic Andrea Novak, and newcomer Damon McCall, the quiet yet magnetic firefighter transferred in from the South Side. The chemistry? Undeniable. The tension? delicious, the potential, off the charts. But if there's one thing fans are begging the writers not to do, it's this. Don't trap Novak and Damon in the overused trauma-bonded romance turned tragic breakup trope. Let's start with what makes the Novak-Damon relationship so refreshing. Andrea Novak came onto the scene with a chip on her shoulder, a sharp, efficient medic who didn't care about popularity contests or playing by anyone else's rules. Initially clashing with Violet and ruffling feathers at 51, Novak slowly started to show her depth. A woman who chose this career not because she wanted glory, but because she knew what it felt like to be powerless in the face of disaster. Damon, on the other hand, came in quietly, carrying a haunted past involving a line-of-duty accident that took his old lieutenant's life. Their connection wasn't instant. It simmered slowly through shared glances, late-night calls, and one unforgettable moment of vulnerability after a difficult call involving a mother and her child. And that's what makes it work. There's nothing superficial about Novak and Damon. Their story feels earned. They don't fall into each other's arms in episode 1. They don't exchange I love yous under a firelit sky. Instead, they lean on each other, challenge each other, and most importantly, they see each other. It's the kind of emotional honesty that Chicago Fire has pulled off so well in the past, like with Casey and Dawson in the early seasons, or more recently, the complicated love between Stella and Severide. But here's where the alarm bells start to ring. Too often, shows like Chicago Fire introduce a compelling romance, especially one involving a character with trauma in their past, only to detour into well-worn territory. A devastating call triggers Damon's PTSD. He pushes Novak away. She makes a mistake with a colleague in a moment of vulnerability, and then boom. We're on the path to heartbreak and miscommunication that will drive across multiple episodes. It's been done. It's predictable. And worst of all, it robs the characters of the very growth the writers worked so hard to build. This trope, the trauma bond turned tragic fallout, is the television equivalent of throwing a bucket of water on a slow-burning flame. Sure, it creates drama, but it rarely feels earned anymore. Audiences have seen it play out time and time again. Two characters get close, something triggers their emotional baggage, they implode rather than communicate, and suddenly their great romance becomes a sad footnote. For a show that thrives on emotional authenticity, Novak and Damon deserve more than that. What makes this pair special isn't just the chemistry, it's the potential for healing. Damon isn't a broken man who needs saving, and Novak isn't a cold woman waiting to melt. They're two people who have been forged in fire, literally and figuratively, and who are learning that strength doesn't mean silence, and vulnerability isn't weakness. There's a beautiful opportunity here. Instead of tearing them apart for the sake of a mid-season drama spike, Chicago Fire could chart new ground. What if, instead of Damon retreating into himself after a triggering call, he opens up to Novak? What if, instead of Novak instinctively putting up walls, she lets herself be supported, not because she's weak, but because she's finally allowing someone to care? That's where the real story is, the risk, the reward. And yes, there will still be obstacles. That's inevitable. Maybe Damon gets injured on a call, and Novak has to face the fear of losing someone she cares about deeply. Maybe Novak's past catches up to her, an old flame with unresolved tension, or a family member she's been avoiding. But those challenges don't have to result in breakups or betrayals. They can be the crucible in which their relationship is tested and strengthened, not shattered. There's also room to explore the dynamic of balancing love and professionalism at 51. Novak and Damon aren't just lovers, they're teammates. Watching them navigate that in a mature, grounded way would not only break the mold, it would elevate the entire tone of the show. We've seen relationships fall apart on Chicago Fire. Let's see one hold fast, despite the heat. And it would be such a gift to viewers who have longed for a pairing that doesn't collapse under pressure. A relationship where love isn't a ticking time bomb but a life raft. Damon doesn't need to be the guy who ghosts when things get hard.